One of my favorite movies to watch is about two guys who got turned down or were pretty much fired from their current job as salesmen for watches. And this movie's called The Internship. And they end up getting an internship with Google as like a college outreach type thing. And whoever wins this internship gets the job at Google. And one of my most used objects or applications is Google Drive, of which I'll get into in a little bit. So cloud computing is something that we use every day, and yet most of us don't know what it is or where our information is going or being stored, or really what the cloud actually is. But aspects of cloud computation have been used over the last 60 years to evolve into an everyday technology. So a little about myself. Cloud computing and cloud networks, or simply the cloud, has always been a fascination of mine because it's not really a solid network, as in it's not tangible, so you can't really touch it, but it's always treated as such. I've been working in the tech field since I was first introduced as a child from my father, and mostly home projects, then professional. And not very many of us can say that we were setting up computers at the age of 6. I currently work here on campus in IT and use what I know daily on home projects outside of school. So to give a brief preview of what I'll be covering today, first I'll discuss the history of the cloud itself. Second, I will talk about the evolution of it. And finally, I will review the pros and cons of using cloud computing. So the idea of cloud computing originally started in the 1950s. According to IBM, who is one of the top leaders in technology and technology development, it started out as multiple users or people could access a central computer through dumb terminals or basically a display monitor like a TV screen. Now, it wasn't economical for a company or organization to buy these huge mainframe computers, which take up an entire room by themselves for every person who works for them. So an ability to access different computers remotely was an asset. This developed further over the decades, from virtual machines running 2 operating systems like Apple's iOS and Windows, all on the same computer at the same time. And then it turned into virtual private networks, which is like a virtual community of computers, to what we have today in the iCloud and Google Drive. So now that I've talked a little bit about the history of cloud computing, I will now discuss the stages of the evolution aspect. So the evolution of cloud computing started off as being able to solve large mathematical problems simultaneously, to utility computing, to software as a service, and then finally to today's cloud computing. And I'll go over all those topics to make sure that you understand those and what they are. Grid computing, or the ability to solve large problems. They were typically large mathematical problems. Is basically the same as running 2 apps at the same time. So we do that pretty frequently on our phones now, and we do it on our computers now all the time with like the calculator app, or Windows, or or like Google Chrome up at the same time. Now utility computing, which is offering resources as a metered service, and that's kind of like paying for extra data before the end of the month for your phone would be pretty close to what utility computing is. It's really hard to describe. The third stage of evolution was software as a service or network-based subscriptions to applications. We use this quite frequently still in application software, and we use it for our outline. It's basically Microsoft Office would be a software as a service. The final stage of evolution is today's cloud computing, which is the access to files or information over the internet anytime, anywhere, and it can be delivered as a service. Now we use things such as Google Drive and Apple's iCloud on probably a daily basis, and those companies use it all the time. And there's other ones such as OneDrive, Dropbox, and Box. Finally, cloud computing, along with everything else, has perks and deficits. A benefit of cloud computing is it reduces IT costs. Managing and maintaining systems can be very expensive because you'd have to hire specific help to help with those problems that you have. So this is reduced because instead of buying systems and the equipment, the business could be using resources from the cloud, such as downloading applications directly from the cloud onto your computer. Also, energy consumption costs are reduced because you no longer have an on-site server, which requires room and constant cooling, and it runs up the power bill extensively. Now for the cons, a deficit of cloud computing would be technical issues and security. The technical issues could be server outages or just connection problems in general, which could last for days to weeks to seconds to hours. It could vary, and it could change within the day. Security is also a big issue now, especially in hospitals and most businesses, because all of our sensitive data can be accessed by a third party, which is basically what the cloud is. It's a third party type system. And we're basically just giving sensitive information over the internet to other people to hide it from everyone else. A recent example within the last few years is Apple's iCloud being hacked. And that affected a lot of people. Anyways, in conclusion, I first talked about the history of cloud computing, and then I discussed the evolution of the cloud, and finally the pros and cons of cloud computation. In summary, aspects of cloud computing are something we as a society have been using for decades and is now an everyday technology.